Who's the primary victim of war, men or women?
Men.
I can't even.
Men.
Men. Men.
Probably men.
Men.
Women and children.
We'll come back to that. What about you?
She's kind of right though. Both.
Yeah.
Both.
Okay.
Both.
So the primary victim of war is both, and you said the primary victim of war is women and children.
Mm-hmm.
Would you care to qualify your answer?
So most men that I know, they choose to serve their country. They want to serve their country and they want to go to war.
Mm-hmm.
And they are bombing these countries and killing most women and children because they're not removing the women and children before the war starts. These women and children are dying.
True.
Well, typically in military conflicts,
Men
although
are
there are
for it.
civilian casualties,
That's what I'm
typically you're
talking about.
trying to dispatch the other male combatants.
The immediate.
You're
I
not.
mean,
That's not like
Yeah, but
you're
that's
not.
not always what
You're not
happens.
intentionally typically going after the civilian population.
Right. That's what makes them the victims.
But
But the
makes-
question was
exactly.
primarily though.
Primary.
That
But
was
it's
who was
primarily.
the victim. The
Yeah,
question was who was the victim.
The question was, who is the primary victim of war?
And I
men
think-
or women?
I think they all
I
are.
believe women and children are the primary victims because they're the ones that are getting they are
Yeah,
the
it depends.
casualties at war. Now, most men that are going to war, they don't see themselves as victims. They see themselves as
If you die in a
honoring
war,
their country.
Okay, if
I'm
if
changing my
hold on.
answer.
What do you change your
Yeah.
answer
Now,
to?
now that I understand it clear, men. They're the one that dying.
Yeah, because a lot of men,
No.
they're forced to go.
Yeah.
Like,
I-
they're
I
not
said-
forced to go,
I
but,
said
like,
both.
I agree with you too. Like a lot of women and children, they
Well,
get killed because
here. Let me
it's a war.
ask you a couple clarifying questions to you.
Me?
To you.
Yeah.
In World War I and World War II, when it comes to the
Draft?
hold on, let me ask the question. You don't need to preempt what I'm going to ask you. Of the population of the United States, who was the primary victim of war, men or
Men.
women,
Men.
for both conflicts?
I believe. Oh, well, if you're talking about like Pearl Harbor, it was men and women. It was equally deaths because a lot of women died at the bombs on the ship.
I think that's dubious. I don't have the data in front of me. I don't suspect there was an equal distribution of deaths during Pearl Harbor between men and women. Perhaps there were surely nurses or something, but that's dubious. I don't know if somebody can do quick research on that, Nick.
But I mean, if you're saying like World War I and II, men definitely were victims of dying to war. Yes.
Okay.
But we were asking who the majority of the victims are, and it's the women and children that are dying for the casualties.
So you think the majority of wars, there's more women and children casualties than the men who are at war?
I mean, they're affected, but not
both.
primarily the one that
I
are
wouldn't know the
impacted.
statistics, but women and children don't ask to die. I mean, these men that are going to war, they have the assumption
Girl,
that they
you
might
think a lot of
die.
the men
So
talking
even
about,
if-
I want to fight for my country. No, they get taken from their
Wait,
families because they be the only sons and they don't have no choice.
The draft hasn't happened in how many years?
Last one.
Vietnam.
I mean, they be
All
they
the war
have
that
more
is
than one
happening
son. My
now.
bad. They have more than one son. they
All
get
the
to-
war. Which
Yeah,
wars?
I just want
Wait,
to correct
hold on.
something real quick. The estimates of civilian deaths in World War II range from about 38 million to 55 million civilian. What do you think that the overall deaths in that war were from non-civilian casualties?
The overall? I wouldn't
Yeah,
know.
that's, well, so non-civilian casualties. So if the estimates are 38 to 55 million civilian deaths, how many people do you think who were not civilians lost their lives?
30 to 55 million? Definitely not millions. I mean, I wouldn't know.
You talking World War II?
Oh, well then, I mean, World War II was the Holocaust almost. I mean, that was Hitler, was it not?
Andrew, you're asking about military casualties, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, you don't think there were millions of military?
Oh, most definitely there was millions of
Well, that's-
military people that died. I'm sorry, I
So if
didn't
we were
understand
to
the
take
question.
it and we say that the civilian deaths, somewhere around 55 million, we know that the 20 million military deaths were basically primarily male. And we know that the civilian deaths are going to be a mixture of men and women, boys and girls. So the thing is that even by this logic, men still overwhelmingly take more casualties and have more deaths in war than women do.
Right, but
Even
are
if
they?
we were to parse it up by civilian casualties, the most of which are not women, it's
But
mixed.
are they victims because they chose to fight?
That doesn't make it.
I'm just asking.
What?
Does that make them a victim if they chose to do something? They
Well,
went
it's
into
not
a
a
situation.
choice. You got drafted, right?
Oh, we are talking about drafted. Then yes, most.
Well, I would argue even among the volunteer force, if you end up going to war and dying, you're still a victim.
Yeah. I'd agree.
Right, yeah.
Now, perhaps there was some understanding that there was a risk when you're volunteering that, perhaps you volunteered during peacetime. You're some Kansas boy, 1940, and then, no anticipation that the United States is going to get involved in this European conflict. Well, there was the Pacific campaign and theater, but you're still a victim if you die.
I could see that. I don't disagree.
Primarily, though, I would just have to ask, what do you think men are fighting for? What do you think the incentive is if you get drafted as a man to go to war?
If you're in America for the freedom of the Constitution,
Yeah, nobody's going over and dying for the freedom of the Constitution. Maybe some people are, but for the most part, don't you think that people are going over under the propaganda of fighting for their families and fighting for the women and children in their domestic homelands?
I wouldn't know because I haven't been to war.
Yeah, I'm not asking you if you've been to war. So I also have not been to war, but I can still speculate as to the motivations of people who go to war and what it is that they're going to war over.
I just know a lot of I have a lot of friends that are in infantry, and they thrive to go overseas to fight for some reason. But those are just the
Because
men
they're
that I know.
protecting they're protecting their homeland, right?
Right. Protecting the
And
Constitution.
mostly that they're protecting the women and children in their homeland. That's their motivation.
100%.
Yeah, so what they're doing is they're going and dying for women and children.
Let me ask a question. So you know how there's medics in the military. So if there's female nurses, and let's say there was a bombing campaign from the belligerent force, and this belligerent force thought it necessary or beneficial for the war effort to bomb. Actually, this is probably a war crime, so I'm kind of to bomb the where the nurses are. And let's say this is primarily made up of women who are treating injured soldiers. With those women, even though they are volunteers or drafted, or let's just say they're volunteer nurses in the military, are they not victims if they end up dying within?
I mean, yeah, they are.
But they volunteered to go into a war zone and be.
Are they victims? Of course they're victims, but they chose they chose to put themselves in harm's way.
But why are you saying they're the victims, but men who volunteer into the military
men
are
are
not victims
like
too?
people that die are victims, yes, but they, like I said, they also chose to put themselves
Sure.
in harm's way.
Okay, I have a
Like
question.
you went somewhere
Go ahead.
knowing that you might die.
But okay, isn't your son going into the military?
Yes, and it
He's
scares me
choosing,
every
right?
day.
He's choosing, right?
Wait,
Yeah.
what's
So if he
what's-
dies, would he not be a victim because he's choosing to go into the military, though?
I mean, of course he's going to be a victim to death.
Okay, but
He chose to fight, so he has to know he has to know that there could be an outcome of him dying.
Okay, but that he's still a victim if he dies. Is what I'm saying. So what you're saying, even if your son chooses to go, he's not a victim because he volunteered to go fight for his country. Is that what you're saying? Because
No.
I'm not understanding.
What does
Oh.
MOS?
Yeah.
We don't know yet.
Oh, he doesn't know yet.
No, they won't
If I
let him
just
go
ask
infantry.
it this way, let me just ask it this way. If you were drafted tomorrow, would you go?
Yes, because I was drafted.
Okay, why
What?
would you go?
Wait, hold on.
have no choice.
Oh, okay, I see it. Because you were okay.
You
were
said if you were drafted, would you go
No,
tomorrow?
you
Yes.
you can dodge a draft. You
I
can,
wouldn't
go to
dodge a
different-
draft.
Yeah, okay, you wouldn't dodge a draft. Got it. So then you're not forced to go. So what would your motivation be to go?
You just said I was drafted. If I was drafted, would I go?
know,
I
but
said
you're not
yes.
actually. Even if you're drafted, you can flee and not go to the draft, like other men have done. Tell me though, what would your motivation be for going?
To protect my children.
To
Back
protect
home
your
in the
children,
States?
right? So then
Yeah. I
the
would kill
thing
for my
is
children.
that if men are the victims of war, they're being victimized in war in order to protect women and children, right? If you were drafted, would you consider yourself a victim if you were killed in a foreign war?
I mean, if I was drafted, yes.
Yes.
But if I chose
And
to
most,
go,
most
no.
men in most of these large-scale conflicts were drafted.
If I was chose to go, I wouldn't see that I was a victim. I would know that I chose to put myself in harm's way, and if I died, I died.
So
Well-
as long as they volunteer to protect the children, then they're not victims. But if they're drafted, they are victims.
I mean, you knew what you were going into when you went to go fight for a country.
Anyways, another question.